So I think getting in different environments where people are doing things different than the way you've done them, you learn so much. You start to figure out too, like whether your way is right or wrong. Maybe you
Yeah.
realize like, oh, the way I do things is actually right in this one category or in this one area, but the way someone else does it, you can learn from them in that way as well.
Friend, here's something I don't know if you know. While the podcast was a thought of mine for a long time, thinking of me absolutely could not be doing this without our very own Wizard of Oz, Kyle, at Goodnight Podcasting Solutions. Kyle's turnaround time, dedication and level of service means that I never have to second guess or worry about the level of support in getting our messaging out to you. If you're curious as to starting your own podcast or just want to see how it might spread your message, reach out to Kyle at kylegoodnight.com or check our show notes. I mean it when I say that we couldn't be doing this without him.
Hello, and welcome to today's episode of the Think and Speak podcast, where we have Andrea Alonso with us, who I'm very grateful to have a conversation with and to introduce to our friends listening. Andrea is someone only in the last couple of months I started to follow on Instagram, and as a new coach and new to the industry myself, it's the connections with people who are steps ahead that are really important to build, but also where you find new friends. And Andrea and I, we only connect here and there a small bit, but as soon as you see someone who you resonate with, and I resonate with Andrea, you go, hey, there's someone a little bit like me. And I'm excited for this full episode together, where I hope we can explore our own connection, but also our friends listening can learn from Andrea's story that I know she'll share and introduce herself. But before I hand over, I would just like to say that if you are interested in following Andrea, you can check her socials, you can see our show notes. And as someone as a mindset coach, her content is invaluable, not just to coaches or anyone who's in that industry themselves, but everyday nuggets that are, as I say, completely invaluable to someone who's working on their growth in their own journey. So, Andrea, if you want to maybe introduce yourself, who you are, your line of work, and anything that our friends would love to know about you.
Thank you so much. That's so lovely. And thanks for having me on as well. I'm really excited to share. I guess a little bit about me. I'm a business and mindset coach. So I help women achieve their dreams. And it is my absolute favorite thing to do. It's been quite a journey to get here. I went on so many of my own personal development journey and then ended up falling into business and falling into coaching other people, and just started to really be like, this is what I want to do. This is what I love. This is what I'm really passionate about. This is where I just feel most lit up. And then I went on that journey and I just started doing it, and I absolutely love it. I love helping people and I love achieving dreams and achieving goals.
And when did you jump in? When did you say, this is what I'm doing? This is for me? I know I've heard your story, but I think at the age particularly, it's so inspiring to know the length of time that you've been putting into this work.
Yeah, so I guess if we go back to the very beginning, my first exposure maybe to personal development and mindset work was when I was 15 years old, and I was having some mental health challenges at the time, and I just got to a point where I was like, I can't keep doing this. And at that time, nobody talked about mental health. It wasn't a thing. I didn't even really understand what was going on. I just knew that I was like sad all the time, and I had a lot of the symptoms of depression. I didn't really understand it. And I was navigating a lot of health challenges at the time. My family were navigating health challenges. There was a lot of things going on that in hindsight, when I look back, it makes total sense. I'm like, yeah, of course. And I didn't really have the tools to deal with it at the time. And I think that's the thing, when you face hard things, having the tools to deal with it is what makes it so much easier to go through. And I got to a point where I was just like, I can't continue like this. Like, I had a lot of kind of like self-hatred and a lot of sadness and all these built up negative emotions that I was just like, I can't continue like this anymore. And to shorten the story, I was sitting on my bedroom floor one day and I was just Googling like reasons to live. And when I did that, I was just like, this is not going to be my story. And so I started being like, how do I get myself out of this? And I didn't tell anybody. I didn't talk to anybody about it. I felt like I didn't want to put more stress on other people. I didn't know anything about it. I didn't know that it was normal. And so I started to be like, how can I get myself out of this? How can I reframe some things? And so I started journaling. I started like just emptying everything that was in my mind out on the paper. And when I kind of got all of the negative things out, I was like, okay, I can't keep going in this circle either. I can't keep like dwelling on all the negative things. So I wrote a list of what makes me sad and what makes me happy. And my goal, essentially, even though I didn't really know much about goal setting at the time, was just to be happy, to not feel like I was feeling anymore. And I started doing more of the things that made me happy. And it was the simplest things. It was like listening to music, playing with my dog. And then I got a marker and I wrote a ton of quotes all over my bedroom wall. And they were reminders to like find the joy in every day and find happiness, and all of these just like little quotes that every single day I would wake up, I would look at them. Before I would go to school, I would see them. When I would come home in the evening, if I was like feeling like crap at nighttime or whatever, I would look at them and I'd be like, no, it's okay, it's okay. And I kind of, that was my first, even though I didn't really know it at the time, that was my first exposure to like working on myself, working on my mindset. And I got myself out of that place, probably within a couple of months, couple of weeks, couple of months. And for me, it was a big thing to like never go back there. And I know that everyone's journey is different when it comes to mental health and things like that. And it can dip in and out. But in ways, I feel very grateful that I had that experience at such a young age and that I navigated it myself, because I really was just like, no, like I'm not getting back into that place again. So if ever like things got hard in life, things have gotten hard many times in life since, I would just catch myself and pull myself out of that. So it was really, really helpful for me. And then I guess I didn't think that much more about personal development for a few years. And when I was 18, I started my first business. And it was in network marketing. And I just dove into personal development. Like I was obsessed with goal setting, with learning about the mind. I'd always been obsessed with human behavior and psychology and why people do things and why people operate differently and stuff, even when I was in school. And so I really dove into that from about 18 onwards, and I learned about Tony Robbins and I started doing some of his things. And I really was like just embracing videos, YouTube, books, all of these things as much as I could at the time. And I remember one of my goals was to go to one of his events. And a couple of years later, I ended up doing that, and I've been to 20 of those events since. And just because I was really putting myself out there, which like, and anybody else who has a business or, has done something that's hard, it's a lot, and it's a lot on your mind to put yourself out there. And so personal development, the more I grew my business, the more I put myself out there in business, the more I went deeper in personal development, and the more it really helped me. So that's kind of how I got into personal development. And then throughout the years, I kept going into it. I kept tapping into it. And I remember just watching Tony Robbins. The first time I went to his event was during COVID when it was virtual. And I was like, I want to do that. Like, I don't know what that is. I don't know what you call that, but like, I want to do that. And I didn't know what a life coach was. The only time I'd ever had like exposure to somebody being a life coach or it being a thing was I was sitting in Budapest one time in a cafe, and the guy beside our table was talking about being a life coach. And I was like, you're a what? And he was like, I'm a life coach. And I was like, what is that? Like, that is the coolest thing ever. And I was like, oh my God, that's exactly what I want to do. I didn't know that that's what it was called, but like, that's the thing that I want to do. So a couple more years passed. I ended up taking everyone's advice and going back and doing a more practical route. When I finished school, I studied fitness, kept going in the business that I was in, then ended up working for a year or two. I always knew that I would go back to college, but I kind of kept putting it off. And then I was like, okay, you know what? Maybe all these people that are like, you should do the practical thing, you should do X, Y, and Z, like you're crazy doing a business in your early 20s. I was like, maybe they're right. So I went back to college. I got a law degree. And when I continued doing the personal development, continued learning, like it was just a huge hobby for me. And I was really studying books, anything that I could. And when I got to the end of the degree, everybody was like applying for graduate roles and law jobs. And I kind of started looking them up and I was just like, I liked studying it, but this is not for me. Like I knew from a very young age that I didn't want the same job for 40 years. I didn't want a job that I didn't like. I didn't want to go into an environment where you're working until like 10 p.m. every night and competing with other associates and things like that. Like I was just like, no, I don't want to do that. And it kind of just finishing college just kind of became a catalyst for being like, okay, what do I actually want next? And I can either go down a path that I already know that I don't want to go down, that I'd known since 18, 19 I didn't want to go down, or I can go and do the thing that I actually want to do, even though it scares the hell out of me, even though I have no idea how I'm going to do it, I can just start. And so that was 2021, and that's when I started coaching. And the journey went on and it kind of took different shapes, and I didn't really know what it was going to look like at the beginning, but I was just like, I'm going to go all in and figure it out.
I love that. I love that. And I love how going from at 18, at 15, working on yourself that length of time, and at 18 going, no, I can start a business, and having that back in yourself, and still having that back in yourself to know that it will work out and that you will figure it out. That's where I know you said there in how, like, even through business and challenges and growth there, that's where the personal growth, comes to show, and those muscles that we strengthen in the personal development world. Because I resonate so strongly with everything you said there. I'm the crazy one right now. Like, even as of last night, my granny, who I love, again, another country, she doesn't understand the world, this world as such. And in her way of asking, she's like, how's playing with your phone going? Like that kind of thing. And of a generation, and sometimes of a culture that is not used to or isn't exposed. And no more than you there, where like you saw the life coach, it's like, well, what is that? It's the kind of thing of, as we kind of stop worrying about explaining it as much and do it and show it, it starts to real and feel real, and become real and feel real. And we kind of talked about that before we came on. I'm glad you mentioned Tony Robbins there, because I've been a student under some of that work and have been to the events and that as well. And at the minute, at the time we're recording, there's another one of those free events on, and there's a friend doing it who for the first time is kind of experiencing some of that. And I had the same experience of going to an event online in COVID. I'm wondering, Andrea, like, who do you keep yourself around, and what has that been like, particularly from, such a young age of, late teens and through your early 20s, of knowing that, hey, I'm going to have the secure option, like what is suggested of me, and, do the things like what my friends are doing. But how do you find, and how have you found that whole journey of connection, I suppose, and community in what seems like quite a crazy road to be going down, quote unquote,
Yeah.
crazy?
Yeah, I totally resonate with that, because you feel like you're the crazy one when you're doing something different. It doesn't matter what it is. It doesn't matter if it's like a new hobby, or you're just doing something different than your family understand or the friends that you grew up with are doing. You kind of feel like the crazy one. And I think that's okay. I think you have to just be okay with that. At the end of the day, I think we all have to take ownership of our own lives. And at the end of your life, what's going to make you happy when you wake up every day, what's going to make you happy with yourself, with the life that you've built, is doing the things that you really want to do and living a life that's really important to you, rather than what everyone else wanted to do. And so, yeah, there was definitely times in my journey where for years I didn't even really tell my friends what I was doing. It kind of felt like this is my hobby and they're not really interested in that. So I didn't really tell them that much about the personal development. And I think that's a big thing too. Sometimes, especially when it comes to personal development, when we find something that works, like, we want to tell everybody about it. Like, if you find a mascara is the best mascara, you want to tell everybody about that. If you do a course and you're like, oh my God, it was life-changing, I want to tell everybody about that. But you don't need to. I think everybody's on their own journey, and that's okay. And sometimes I've always chased growth Sometimes growth will show up in your path when you really don't want it and you really don't feel like you need it, and that life will throw growth at you and you'll just have to grow. Or otherwise you can look for it and you can chase it and you can try and find it in things. So there was definitely times of the journey where I kind of limited my circle. I've always kind of had a small circle anyway. I really value like deep relationships and meaningful relationships. And so there was times where it was like, you know what, right now, like these people that are around me or that I've been hanging out with maybe are not the people that have the life that I want. And you know, there's a quote that Tony Robbins says, a lot of people in personal development say this: you become the 5 people that you spend most of your time around. And I heard that really young. And in some ways, I think when I was younger, I took it a little bit too seriously. But after years of kind of like playing with that, I've learned that like I have friends who are not interested in personal development, who maybe don't understand my business, but they're amazing people in so many other ways. And so we can still have a beautiful friendship, beautiful relationships. But elevating the people that I spend my time around really helped me, because I think when you are in the same environment, when you grow up in the same town, you spend your time around the same people, you can start to have the same mindset as everybody else. And I think it's really helpful, whether you find people that you resonate with or you don't. It's really helpful to get out and just meet different people and see how other people think, because it's so powerful in changing how you think. We are so held back by our own limitations. So if you don't think something is possible, like if you think being a millionaire is a huge deal and like impossible for you, get around a few millionaires and you'll feel very differently about that. If you think that being a millionaire is the biggest thing that you could ever do in terms of like, I don't know, wealth. I mean, obviously there are a ton of different categories of how you could do big things, but let's say you think being a millionaire is the biggest thing. Get around a couple of people who are like multimillionaires or who are billionaires, and you'll be like, oh, wow, my mind has expanded even more. So being around people who lived life the way I wanted to, whether it was they had the kind of relationship that I really wanted, or they had the kind of health that I really wanted, or they thought the way I wanted, or they had a business the way I wanted. It really, really helped me to raise my standards, because you end up becoming the people that you are around. And if the people that you're around standards are lower than what you want for yourself in your life, then you're going to settle for that. We live in tribes. There's so much psychology around how we try to resonate with the people around us. And so it can be a huge limitation, or it can be like a rocket that just launches you forward, because you just start to see how people think differently. And doing that from different environments, not only from personal development, but from business, from moving to a different country, from working in different environments, has really helped me to just be able to connect with other people. And I think it makes the journey a lot easier too. I have friends that I absolutely love and adore, and I'm so lucky to have them, and being able to share the journey with them really makes it so much better.
I love that. And for some of our friends listening, we mostly have a mix of some of our Irish friends, we have some of our friends over the water, over America, US, and that. But for the most part, anyone who I work with has a countryside background at the moment. And, speaking to one of our younger clients this week in, college choices and navigating next steps and that kind of thing, in making some of those decisions, and what feels like one decision now is your whole life, and that you can't pivot later, or that, it's the end of the world financially and all that kind of thing, one way or the other. And having that conversation of small town pubs, and like that, where I'm from geographically is small town, and even when I went to secondary school in the bigger town, it was the kind of thing of, oh God, now you went from like the small really rural primary school to the secondary school where, there's nearly the same number of people in a class as there is in the whole school, kind of thing. At a young age, when those stack, you learn and grow with it. But as you say, maybe if it's the kind of thing that you've never been exposed to, it can feel harder. It can feel a little bit more of a struggle to not escape, but to find avenues in. what would you say to anyone who's never looked or explored kind of personal development, self-education industry, even just those kind of activities that help to find people who are like you, I suppose, that isn't just maybe, I know that's a bit of a wide one these days, but yeah, that isn't just some of the norms that we see happen in particularly maybe those early college days where everyone's kind of doing the one thing and starting to find different flocks and all that kind of thing. Have you an experience, or is there like a go-to tip you would have?
I make no secret of the fact that my life changed completely when I reached out to Achievable Fitness 365. Jay is someone who not only gets the fitness side of things, he gets the human side of things. And in having someone who's walked the walk and talks the same thoughts has made me comfortable from the very get-go. Actually, that's a complete lie. I fell in the door and was sick on my first day, but kind of after that, I got comfortable somewhere along the line. Jay knows people, he knows the industry, and he's someone who will know you better than you know yourself. The accountability that he holds, the standard that he sets for you and not for anyone else is what brought me back into me originally, more than 4 years ago. If you're ready to begin your fitness journey and don't know where to reach out, try Jay. And as I say, my life has never been the same since.
I think find things that you like try loads of different things and see what you like, and then through that you can meet people who also like those things. So it might not be personal development. For me, when I was a teenager, I started doing martial arts. I started doing jujitsu, and before that I was like the laziest person ever. I hated fitness, I hated anything. Like I would always try and get out of PE in school.
Same.
And then when I fell in love with it. So basically the reason why I started doing it was I always wanted to go. I was always wanted to like go and travel. And I was 16 and I wanted to go the following year to live in Spain for the summer on my own. And I just had this idea and I was like, I want to do it. My dad is Spanish, so we used to always come to Spain on holidays. And I was like, next year I want to go for the whole summer. I'm going to get a job. I asked somebody for a job. They said they would give me. I was like, I'm going to work in this place and I'm going to live on my own. And my dad was like, he was always trying to get me into martial arts for like self-defense and stuff. And he was like, you are 16 years old. You are not going to Spain on your own for the summer. And then I was like, literally like a bull. I was like, no, like this is what I want to do and I'm going to do it. And he was like, okay, if you learn martial arts, you can go. So I was like, okay, let's go. So he would, and I have the same background as you with like the rural school and then the school in the town. And so he would drive me into Limerick and we would go to jiu-jitsu, and it was purely because I had made this deal with him and I wanted to go to Spain. Like nothing was getting in the way of that. So I was like, I don't care. This is weird. I don't fully understand this, but I will do this sport so that I can go to Spain. And then I remember about a month in, I remember I started it in like October, November, and it was just like the most winteriest, horrible day. And I was in school and I was like in after school study and I was like, oh, gotta go early because I gotta go to jujitsu. And I was just like, oh, I really don't want to go. Like the weather is crap. Like I don't want to go. And then I kind of was like, oh, but like, what if they learn something new? Like, what if I miss out on something? And I realized that was a moment where I was like, oh, I actually like this. Like I'm going now because I actually like it, not just because I made this deal with him. And so I ended up going like 3 times a week and became obsessed with it, which then made me like, I want to have more fitness because I want to be better at jujitsu. So I started running, and then I went and got 2 fitness certifications and became a fitness instructor and worked in a gym. And so I would say, like, if you told me before that you're going to do martial arts, I would be like, not a hope. Like, my dad's been saying it for years. There's no way I'm going to do it. And I got to meet a ton of people through that as well. So I would say, like, just go and get out and do things and see what the different things that you like are, because everybody likes different things. Figure out what they are. You're going to suck at some of them. You're going to hate some of them. You're going to love some of them, but find out what it is for you and then just connect with people through that. And I think I will say as well, like, it's a big topic in your 20s and your 30s as an adult. Basically, it's really hard to make friends.
Yeah.
But I always think like just come to it with an open mind. Don't be afraid. Like people are gonna think you're weird or something. If they think you're weird, then don't be friends with them.
Yeah.
Just like talk to
Simple.
people.
Yeah.
Like just
You
just
know,
talk to
we
people.
don't
Like
say
be
that enough.
nice.
It's exactly it. It's like if you think they're going to think you're weird, then that's not your person, you know. So yeah, I love that.
Exactly. Yeah, and like I think for me as well, I've with the personal development industry, I've made a lot of friends all over the world from different programs and
Yeah,
stuff. And I think like just be authentic, just be you. I think that makes such a difference. Like I'm actually very introverted naturally, but I
yeah,
really love spending time with people who I can have deep conversations with. Like I will talk deep conversations 24/7. So I've noticed, and building an online community for women as well in the entrepreneurship space, I've noticed that just being yourself, being authentic, and just asking people questions that like you genuinely want to know the answer to, and that
hmm
it just sparks off a really good conversation and makes such a difference.
for definite. That's, I'm still laughing at the, yeah, if they think you're weird, that's not your person. But it's so true. Like it's quite a funny one. So if anyone's listening who, has followed me for a while or has ever knew me, particularly like say 5+ years ago, like I'm, I am quite out there. I never would have a problem in having a chat with anyone. I talk to a wall, but at the same time, I am actually very what way is it extrovertly introverted. So like in the gym, for example, like when I started going first, and I was actually only there this morning, and it's the kind of thing of there's someone using the machine, I can now go, hey, are you nearly done, whereas that's taken like 4 years of going to kind of actually look up and around the place, where it's like, oh yeah, I go here, and you know their basic hellos and goodbyes are okay with other people in an environment that I don't feel comfortable in, I suppose, is where I get quite introverted. And
Yeah,
it,
I think
I
on that
suppose,
as well.
yeah, sorry.
Sorry, when it comes to being like introverted or extroverted, for me,
Yeah.
I'm both. Like same as you, I would talk to a wall. Like if you told my family or friends that I said I was introverted, they'd probably be like, "What? No, she's not. She doesn't shut up." I think
Yeah.
it's like you want to be mindful of not putting yourself into boxes, but the more that you learn about yourself, life gets so much freaking easier. Like whether you're into personal development or you're not, the more that you just start to notice things about yourself, you can really use
Mhm.
that to your advantage. And so even like being introverted is something I've only really started to fully recognize and own in like the last few months, because before that I was like, no, like I'm really social. I love people. Like it's always been like I love
Yeah.
people. But
Same.
I started to learn more about it, and I'm like, okay, I love people when I can have a really deep conversation with them. I love people that I'm
Yes.
comfortable with, or people who really
Yeah.
see me. I don't like transactional relationships, or I really value alone time. I love
Yeah.
resting and being alone. I'm not the type of person that can be like out socializing like every day of the week. Like, no, that would exhaust me.
Yeah.
And other people are not like that. And I think that's how I started to realize it, where I'm like, no, I need time to recharge my social battery. Whereas there are people who just could go, go, go all day, every day.
Yeah.
And I think when you start to learn these things about yourself, it's so powerful because it makes it okay. And it's not like, oh, I need to try and go out that often too, or I need to be more social. It's
hmm
like, no, sometimes I'm going to be social and sometimes I need to rest. And that's just me, and that's okay.
No, for definite. And that's really interesting when we think about, our social norms, but also our social housing kind of a side of things, and how, in my experience, you go from living at home to going to college. And my first course at the time before I left, I was staying in digs. So in a situation where it was in someone else's house and I was just renting the room there. And, you can kind of get quite isolated quite quickly in those kind of things, where especially if you haven't made new friend groups in the college or the course or the new place that you're in. But then equally then when I was in a house with college friends, then in the new course and in the new environment, all that kind of thing, you can still have a tendency, if you don't know how to recharge your battery, there can nearly be that closed off approach that you put yourself into if you, as you say, maybe don't even realize that that's something you need, or how to kind of create a bit of a space of connecting and then also disconnecting, and I think now with social media particularly as well, we've had no electricity, and this is, just after the storm hit Ireland and all that, we've had no electricity for the week. And in a way it's been quite nice walking around the house with my like Harry Potter oil lamp, striking my match after 9 p.m, or after 5 p.m, what am I saying? But the other night it was like after 9 p.m. And I was like, I could not sleep, not for the life of me, because it was still early, and I've been so used to kind of working late. But anyone listening who maybe that happened to at all over the little while, you definitely go back to basics. But it was quite nice in the sense of I had a bit of a clearer boundary, again, of, okay, where's like the social time and where's the switch off time. So yeah, I suppose when I say that and mention that kind of from a housing side of things, I think at the developmental age that, and all the things that happen and shift in your early 20s, and figuring things out in all aspects, like career, where you want to be living, relationships, yourself, everything. I know you've done a lot of travel, and as have I, and I should say, I haven't been in the last couple of years, but I had been doing that all through the college years and that too. It's not just the people you get around that you learn from. I suppose my question is, what did you learn about yourself from the different environments? And yeah, all things, even routine, I suppose. Did they look the same in different places? Or yeah, I suppose, what's your story there?
I think it's hard to have a routine when there's a lot
Yeah.
of disruption. That I find that very hard. When if I go home, it throws off my routine. It's a hard thing to balance. But when it comes to traveling, and I think you hit the nail on the head there, it's getting in new environments. Because I think this is going to be a bit of a controversial opinion here, but I feel like so many people say like travel is the only thing that's going to make you richer. And as someone who was just like from about 15 onwards was just like, get me out, like get me going somewhere. My mom would say like I would go to see two flies crossing a road. Like I'd go to any concert, anything that was going on, any trip that you'd ask me to go on, I would go on, or I'd be like, come on, let's go on this trip to everybody. And
Yeah.
I loved it. And I had a lot of great experiences from travel, but I think in so many ways, travel for people is a holiday. And I think there's a difference between
Yes.
holiday and like glorifying it as an experience where you're going to go and learn something and you're going to experience different cultures, especially now when like we know so much about the rest of the world. If it was like
Yeah.
50 years ago and people didn't know anything about what was going on outside of their town or how different cultures did things, then yeah, it would be like really probably transformative for you to travel to so many different places. But I think the key to it is not necessarily in the travel or in the, especially if it's a holiday, like if it's a holiday where you're like going to Thailand. I didn't really learn anything in Thailand at the full moon party, you know? Um, but when I went and lived in America and I lived in San Francisco and worked in a tech company there, I learned so much. And so I think it's really the environment that matters. Like if you're, whether it's traveling or whether it's finding that environment in your city or in Ireland, there's so much going on in Ireland in this space now. There's so many things for people who have all sorts of different passions that you can go to. I think changing your environment is one of the fastest ways to grow and the fastest way to change because you really see the difference between where you are and where other people are.
Yeah.
Um, when I was working in San Francisco, it was my first time working in a corporate environment. Like my work experience essentially was like working in Burger King, working in Subway, working in a gym as a fitness instructor, and then I had my own business. So I didn't really have corporate
Yeah.
experience. But being that bit older and kind of being that bit further along in my career, I didn't really want to, and this is a kind of a piece on identity as well, but I didn't want to see myself as like the new person or like didn't really know what was going on. But there were so many
Yes.
new things that I was like, oh, like this is how people do things here. Like, oh, this is the process for this. And I learned so much about working, about myself, about other people, all through that experience. So I think getting in different environments where you just, people are doing things different than the way you've done them, you learn so much. And you start
That
to figure
is,
out too, like whether your way is right or wrong. You know, maybe you
yeah.
realize like, oh, the way I do things is actually right in this one category or in this one area, but the way someone else does it, you can learn from them in that way as well.
My experience of that is in the different school settings. In a Dublin school versus the country school, like they're worlds apart, and decades apart, to be honest, in ways too. But and some of that's the nature of the subject, but without like even going into like the nitty gritty of that kind of thing, it's, as you say, you learn what is right maybe for you and how things can work, and then you also learn actually and being humble enough to go, I'm doing this wrong in this context maybe, or that I have more for learning. And I think especially when we even use the word mindset, like that's the difference between that growth mindset and that kind of boxed off, closed. And let's jump in there. Like, what do you see as maybe one of the biggest obstacles for people in kind of breaking through into that growth mindset and coming out of that box and that kind of closed off? How do you find when you're working with clients, or even through business, and maybe some of the business kind of obstacles and challenges you've had over the years, what do you find is maybe the key to kind of starting to open that up a bit into kind of going, maybe it is me, or maybe there's something I need to learn here, and kind of, as I say, unboxing the approach?
I think it starts with wanting more, like with seeing something that you want that you don't already have, whether it's a goal, or it's still even just a dream, or it's still even just like an idea of a possibility that there could be something better out there. I think that becomes the catalyst for change. Or else it's like extreme pain, like you go through an experience that's very painful that kind of forces you to look at yourself, whether it's like a breakup or a health challenge or a loss or some form of rejection or something that it kind of just comes up in your path in life and forces you to be like, okay, I need to take a look at this. For me and the people I work with, it is usually the having a goal. Like, I've always had dreams and goals, and that's always the way I've been. So I tend to attract people who are like that. And we navigate the hard things too, but I think that is the starting point. And then you start to realize that, like, if you want something that you don't have, you have to become somebody that you haven't been. You have to do things that you haven't done. The version of you who has gotten you here is not the version of you that's going to get you there. And I think it comes very naturally. I think you start to realize that. Okay, so I want to start a business, or I want to grow a business, or I want to career pivot, or I want to move to a different country. And you look at other people who have done that and you're like, okay, what have they done differently that I haven't been doing? Because I think we're all students. Like, we're all students of life. We're always going to be learning. We're always going to be growing. And so no matter what it is, you do realize that there's a gap between where you want to go and where you are right now. And I think growing yourself is a huge part of closing that gap. I think a lot of people stay stuck when they don't fully lean into the growth. And so, I think that's a really powerful part of it.
100%. And it's kind of, you could say it's kind of having that student mindset as well. Like, my granny always said that. She always said, you'd learn, it doesn't matter what school you're in, she kind of always put it back on you. And I honestly have no teacher I could ever complain about. Every teacher, and even, through college and that, like, I'm really grateful in that, even if I could recognize that, even if maybe the strategy wasn't there, the want was somewhere there, or the try. And so what I mean is, from that, if you want to learn from someone and you want to learn what's on the other side of it, whether it's like that goal approach, or you need to upskill, or you need to increase your knowledge and your intelligence maybe on something, if you want it bad enough, you will find that way. So I'm wondering, with the travel and with where you are now and your current set of goals, you don't need to share your current dreams or goals or anything that you don't want to, but what is your next step for business, or for you, where's your kind of focus on right now? Is it on Andrea? Is it on business? Is it in messaging? What's kind of 2025 like for you?
I have always been someone who, when you look at like the wheel of life, which is a circle essentially with all the categories of your life, I've always been like, I want to improve all of them. People are like, choose two. I'm like, no, all of them. They're all. And I was very like, I don't know, I guess self-critical about it too, where I was like, they're all at like threes. Like 10 was like huge, rather than being like, oh, yeah, like this one, I'm killing it in this one. I'd be like, yeah, I'm doing quite good, but that still could be better. And that's the growth mindset too coming out. But this year I'm really intentional about two categories, which are health and business. I feel like it has helped me to kind of have all of them. Sometimes maybe it's hard to have so many plates spinning or so many balls in the air, but I feel like I have developed a ton in the category of relationships. Personal development was always a huge one for me. I've developed a lot in that, and I know that in those as well, I will continue to develop in those.
Sure.
Same with health. The first business that I started was actually in the health industry, and so same thing, from a very young age, I really started learning about health and got into health a lot. But I think when I look at my life last year, what areas did I not do as well as I would like to have done in? And health was definitely one of them, because like we were saying with routine, I moved twice last year, and each time kind of came with like a few weeks at home in between and stuff. And so I had gotten into a really good workout routine and then fell out of that for like the whole second half of the year. And I think action breeds action as well as one of the greatest things. Like laziness breeds laziness. And so sometimes you can start doing something and it can grow and you can keep doing it and you're like, okay, I'm doing great. And then sometimes something just gets in the way and you kind of end up maybe hitting pause on whatever that thing is, and weeks turn into months. And so that's why I'm trying to catch myself on that this year. And I'm like, I want to go all in on health and then business as well. I feel like with where I'm at in business, with where I'm at in my life, those are the two things that I really want to focus on. And I know that I'll focus on the other ones as well, but those are the biggest ones for me right now.
I love that, because I was at your event obviously a few weeks ago, and for dream building, and in putting the reflection again back to something, just focus on one or two. That's where I was like, oh yeah, sure. It's again the thing of you can. It's not that you can't, but you can achieve everything, but you can't do everything at once. It's that singular focus, and there's that analogy of the snails across the desert. Or are you just going to be the cheetah that sprints with the one thing? So you can move the snails. I may be saying it wrong, but you can go slowly across and bring everything kind of with you, or you can kind of take one thing and run with it, and then be like, okay, and go back for the next thing or whatever it might be. So yeah, having maybe two things that complement each other, absolutely. And for anyone listening, who is looking to fix everything at once, it sometimes is just as simple as coming back to, well, what's that one thing that in looking after your health, maybe will give you that energy again, that self-care approach to then look at career, business, or then look at your relationship or whatever it might be. So there is sometimes I think there's a strategy to the wheel of life, even though it's all connected. I do think, particularly when it feels like the whole thing is flat, you can definitely take, maybe just one. And, Tony would say that, it's physiology first. And my story definitely, in terms of change, when it started to go from that thing of, like you shared with yours, using the pen, and using the journal to, if you couldn't, I had nowhere to communicate. I felt like I had nowhere to communicate. I felt like, I have no way of figuring this out, and starting to figure it out on pen and paper, and which absolutely, I still stand by as the number one thing. Get a pen, get a paper. We're in such a digital age that maybe type it out if that's what you've been used to, but still find a pen. Most people listening have done a Leaving Cert or have to do a Leaving Cert at some point or whatever, or a written paper exam. In having that thoughts on paper, but kind of seeing the words written out in some way, shape, or form. If something that's come from you, it really trigger isn't even the right word, but it really just kind of gives you a shake sometimes, in, is this actually what my life either looks like? Is this actually what I'm thinking or feeling? And, then in finding a strategy away from that, but in changing your story, as we know, comes first. And that thing of, well, is this who I actually am? And, I know you mentioned there, where it's like some of that identity work of, well, this isn't going to be my story, this isn't going to be me. And as I say, in some of that change for myself, and anyone who's ever followed my story knows that really and truly catalyst for change began with physiology first. So yeah, and same as you, I hated PE. I'd have the hurl, and you'd like put the hurl in the ground to try and like dig, or I turn it into a guitar or anything at all. I actually know some of the songs is like, it's a cool day, like you'd like don't want to play, like just messing with the hurl in the pitch. But in all of that, Andrea, it's exciting to hear where you're heading, and where this year is going for you. If you, again, kind of in context of what we were chatting about even before we came on, and we mentioned here with home and routine, if you could say there's one thing that is a non-negotiable for you daily that just either moves you forward or grounds you or whatever it might be, what is it that like absolutely just staples, bookends, roots in your day, no matter where you are or what it is that's happening?
It's hard. There's been different things at different times, and there's different practices that I have right now that are helping me. But I think at the one that's the most important for me and that's been the best is gratitude. And I know that so many people talk about gratitude. I'm honestly sick of hearing about it. I don't know if other people are also sick of hearing about it, but it's the act of like actually appreciating things. And it's not the thing of like sitting down and being like, what are 3 things I'm grateful for today? Or writing 3 things that you're grateful for. That has never really worked for me. I've tried it at different times with like journaling habits and things, but it's like appreciating whatever you can about today. Appreciating like when you walk outside, appreciating something about it.
Yeah.
Maybe it's raining, but like maybe that's kind of nice. Or maybe you're just like grateful that you can go for a walk, and like really start to look for things that you can appreciate and that you are grateful for, because I think over time it's the thing that will like rewire your brain, your mind, and your life so much. Because when hard things happen, when you have difficult days, when you have good days, you start to you really appreciate the things that you can appreciate about it. Some people, they have some of like what somebody else might consider like a dream life, or they have the most amazing things in their life, and they don't even really appreciate it because they haven't built that muscle. And so I think the one thing that is really important for me, and I think can help a lot of people every day, is just finding something that you can be grateful for or that you can really appreciate, and kind of almost making a game out of it, because it becomes natural with time. It just, you end up doing it and you see life so differently, which is really the best thing. Like getting things doesn't really matter. It matters if we're happy. It matters if we love our life day to day.
That's so true. That's exactly it. And recognizing the life that you're in, as you say, like even if you can do that in the hard times, like it makes the great times even greater, that if you can kind of just spot even one thing. And yeah, I'm trying to think. I know, well, the outdoors was always a big thing for me, but I'd probably always have to say maybe the lake, like close to home, like that would kind of always kind of put me back into awe of, God, I'm grateful for the quiet here, but I'm also nearly a little in awe of sometimes the scenery. So yeah, water-based kind of for me would have been like particularly in the tough days. So for anyone listening who, is searching for what is there, in terms of finding things to be grateful for, where do you kind of navigate to in the tough times, and maybe start there. Sometimes that the clue is in what you're already doing, I think. So Andrea, thank you so much for sharing like all your wisdom. There's like oodles. There's buckets of value there for anyone who doesn't even know where to start in the word mindset, or even sometimes the word transformation or personal growth or development. It really is stacking the days and stacking the small things and suddenly then you have a growth journey, and even if it's the thing of that you don't have the language or the lingo or what a goal is. I love your story there of, wanting to travel and knowing that like this is something you have to do to get there, So it can be something simple in your day to day that you mightn't even realize actually is habits or is, um that that growth approach, as we say, or getting around the right people or the environment and all the wealth that you've shared at the minute. I would love if you would maybe join us on our Women's Summit. I'm asking you here on the podcast if you would be curious to come on and chat with our women who are thriving and women who are looking to thrive even onto a new level. We'll be holding that just before Valentine's. We're kind of doing it as a women's only event, and would it be something that you would like to come on and share and meet some of the other gals and share for some of the gals who would be joining us live as well?
Yes, I would love that. I was just going to say, with the two of us, we both talk so much. I feel like we could be here for hours.
Really good, yeah.
So yeah, I would love that. And thank you so much for having me. It's been so good.
No, it's been really fun. And as I say, like sometimes in anything new, as I said at the start, in anything new, when you don't know anyone else who's doing it, it's like, okay, well, I'm this crazy loner person here, and then you find someone who's like, oh yeah, great friend, and then it's in building that. And again, for anyone listening, but like it can be as simple as the little things, I think particularly in today's world, like social media, is like who's in your corner, who's actually seeing the stuff that you're doing. Whether you're new, I'm so green, whether it's someone new starting out or you're admiring what is, the big, as I call them, like the big guys, but like big girls, and that out there who are you in a different realm. Sometimes I like to look at it as, and that's where you find a new tribe, So yeah, I suppose maybe we'll finish with, I know you're in Spain at the minute, and again a season of change and everything there, and gratitude. I love seeing where you are. I'm actually so jealous. I sometimes like don't look at your story till I'm in the mind frame of, okay, I'm grateful to see where someone else's gratitude is in the month of January here at home. But yeah, how are you finding all of that, or what's the rest of your week like now? Just how's that day to day, and what's the rest of the day maybe have in store for you?
It's a lot of work. With the business being the top priority as well for 2025, it's a lot of like sitting at my desk and working. But it's
Yeah.
also a lot of doing what I can in my day to I work weekends, but I love my days. I love every day. I love the weekdays. You see that that's the gratitude and the Instagram stories of like I'll go out. I think I've gone out every day, every morning this month to
I
see
think
the
you have,
sunrise.
yeah.
And
Because
it's
I
I
don't
will
look at it
say
till
it's
the
at
evening.
8 a.m. It's not like a 5 a.m. sunrise. It's an 8 a.m. sunrise. So I get out and I see it and I get for a walk. And I think really having that like light on my face and getting my body moving every morning really helps. And then I would walk, like I would walk all day if I could. So I walk a lot and I try to like stack time as well. So I'll walk and I'll listen to like a podcast or a training or something that's gonna help my mind. Um, and then yeah, just working and just like finding little magic moments in life as well. That's something that I really like to do in in the mundane and finding the things that you know what, like you said, it's easy to be like, oh, you're in Spain, like right now I live right by the beach, I go out, the sunrise is right there. But I
Yeah,
think the times in my life where I've been so connected to gratitude is the times when that wasn't life, when I was like
yeah,
living in Dublin, or when I was in a job that I hated, that I would cry going to work, and I was like, okay, like I have to figure this out, I have to work on this gratitude. And those were the times that I ended up really, really being connected to the gratitude. So I think for me, it's about trying to create a life that while I'm working towards everything that I want, I can also enjoy the day to day and enjoy the life that I have. And so that's where like the gratitude and the appreciation come in. Like I will be the most grateful person who's walking by the beach in the morning, or I'll be the most grateful person who's having lunch out and about and things like that. So yeah, that's kind of my life. I walk,
I
work
love it.
out, work. and try and find the magic moments. Even like recently, my granny came to visit, and she's probably very like your granny too, where she doesn't really understand what I do. But it was during the dream building event, and I really didn't have that much time to spend with them. So I really only had like the Saturday. And so I got up earlier and I went to the shop and I got all these things for breakfast, and we carried the balcony furniture out onto the beach. And I was like, oh, do you want to come and have breakfast? And she was like, sure. And then we had this like sunrise breakfast on the beach, like right by the waves. And it was so beautiful. And I think like I could have just slept. I could have just texted her and said, okay, meet me at this cafe, or we're going to go and do this. I could have just like done something totally normal, but there's so many opportunities in your life to just make little magic moments. And I think the more that you do that, the more that your life adds up to be like the dream life that you want. And I think we all have the power to do that whenever we want as well.
That's so special, because it's in things like that where you nearly couldn't plan it. It's like if you try to do something like that where, it's like, let's get organized and make sure that, we have everything set up, and you maybe make a big breakfast, all those kind of ceremony kind of things, which are important, and like when you make an event or something, like they are important, but it's the tiny little moment of my granny sitting by the range with a cup of tea, and we're both sitting there having like a chat that wasn't meant to be a chat, but now is suddenly like a deep chat or a good chat, or we solve, or pretend to solve at least, a bit of a problem, and you couldn't plan it. You can't look for how to do them. They just happen. And I love that with the magic moments. I feel that. I know exactly what you mean. And what came to mind there as well is it like manager of circumstances or creator of extraordinary life, and again, that's Tony there, where it's like, am I just dealing with this job? Am I dealing with this family situation? Am I dealing with this health issue? Am I dealing with this relationship that doesn't fit, or whatever it might be? Or am I actually creating something that I know is for me, and things happen for us, but a life that I'm aligned with. So that's so exciting that you're at a point where those days look like that for you, and I'm so excited to see how the rest of them unfold, and particularly over the year. And thank you so much for wanting to come onto the summit too. I think we would just talk through it for definite, but it'd be great to connect with more gals, all kind of like-minded in that too. And for anyone listening who hasn't registered, you can go to thinkofmecoaching.com/summit and reserve your spot, where Andrea will be with us and some of our other gals from season 1, and also some other guest speakers, where we talk all things thriving and living in that, really, more than anything else. And Andrea, you're someone who definitely lives it.
Yes, thank you so much. It's been amazing, and hearing more about your journey as well is incredible. So thank you.